I wanted to address the topic of self-diagnosis. So my name is Danna. I'm a psychotherapist, and I think a lot about neurodiversity. I work with a lot of neurodivergent clients, and I do a lot of reading, critiquing, analyzing, like sort of trying to make sense of the whole world of diagnosis. And I want to be really clear that I am highly in favor of the act of self-diagnosis, even though I know for so many people it lacks a certain level of validity, and that there is a feeling of validity, understandably, associated with getting a professional diagnosis. My skepticism around official diagnosis is, one, the money. It's hard to get it covered. It's hard to get an appointment for it. It's hard to even know what or who to call for it. Like, all of this information is extremely opaque, and it's hard to know what's the difference between getting a diagnosis from like a psychiatrist who would just like write it down after meeting you for 20 minutes, or a full battery of tests that would lead to an official diagnosis from a developmental psychologist or an educational psychologist. The whole thing doesn't really make a ton of sense. That said, once you get an official diagnosis, there's a huge amount of sort of like integrity you feel around your diagnosis and relief you feel around your diagnosis. And I was thinking, like, how can one give that to oneself? I was even thinking, like, maybe I could make a form, I don't know, like in my Linktree or whatever. I don't have a Linktree yet, but like your self-diagnosis, and it would be a piece of paper, and on that piece of paper would be the date of your self-diagnosis, would be the material supporting your self-diagnosis, like what books did you read that finally led you to this conclusion, would be conversations that led to this diagnosis. You could make a list of people who have misdiagnosed you, like how many professionals over time. You could write down all the ways knowing this might have made a difference for you educationally, socially, spiritually. You can make a list of the history of special interests you have, most common ways you self-regulate with stimming. You could just write it down and make it your own. Maybe at like in a form format or in a journal format, and you can pick the day of your diagnosis, and then you could, like a year later, be like, I've been diagnosed for a year. And I'm partly putting this out there because I want people to have like a high level of empowerment around diagnosis. And also, it's not until we like kind of give ourselves permission around diagnosis that we can really start to ask for accommodations. Who knows if you'll get them if you're not officially diagnosed, but even socially or in your like most intimate relationships, you can start to ask for accommodations. So another thing you could write down is like the top 5 accommodations you know you need. So you have that with you, kind of like as a piece of self-care and self-knowledge. It's kind of like a manual of the self. I think it would be really cool if you could write down your diagnosis for yourself. And you could just write neurodivergent, you could use subtypes, you could be totally specific. Or you could say, emerging knowledge of neurodivergence. You don't have to do any of this. This could just be like an internal dialogue. I just want you to know that if you know, you know.